My name's Eric Smith. I lead our managed partner team, which is a group of partner development managers spread globally who focus on technology integrations and deep go-to-market with a bunch of the world's leading startups. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. I meet with companies all the time in my travels, and one of the constant conversations I hear over and over and over again from partners is, how do I expand beyond my local geography? When's the right time? How do I do it quickly, and how do I establish success for myself? So if you think about it, true global presence really requires expansion both from a technology perspective as well as from a market entry perspective. So you might be an expert in your local region, but as soon as you go somewhere new, it's day one all over again. So how do you fundamentally match the technology integrations that you've done with the business motions that are necessary to expand globally? For this session, I've invited two founders who have built their solutions on AWS and are successfully scaling their startups into true global businesses. And India is the founder and CEO and chairman of Mobile Wallet, a mobile consumer intelligence company. And Korwat is co-founder, CEO of Echo Communications, a collaboration and communications platform. And Indy, do you want to spend a few minutes talking about what you guys have done?
Sure. So Molewala is a consumer data and intelligence company. So very simply put, we collect very large amounts of raw consumer behavior signals from many different places, and then put it all together to create data and intelligence artifacts that typically large enterprises so far, but there's no reasons why small enterprises shouldn't either. But enterprises buy from us for a variety of purposes. The best way to understand Molewala is is for me to describe to you a few use cases of our products, right? So let me describe to you three use cases. So probably the largest vertical that consumes Molewala intelligence is telecom. And there are the reasons that what telcos do with our data is various, but at its basis, what we do for telcos is increase the amount of knowledge they have about their consumers. Right? So telcos typically know a lot about their consumers when they're on the telco's network, but it turns out that 60% of the time, a typical telco subscriber is outside of the native network. The telco doesn't know, for instance, what a Singtel doesn't know what a Singtel subscriber is doing when they're not on a Singtel network. So one very common use case for telcos is we supplement the data they have on their own consumers by telling them what their consumers are doing outside of their network. Right? So generically put, data enrichment. Second use case, a large auto insurance company buys data from us to basically figure out how likely their policyholders are likely to have accidents, right? So in the United States, where this auto insurer is, 70% of auto accidents happen in the dark, right? So what Molewala provides this auto insurer is location patterns, movement patterns of its policyholders when it's dark. And that helps this company figure out, basically increases the predictive power of their risk models. A third and final use case I'll give you is from an entirely different segment. There's a large hedge fund that takes long positions. Basically, they take long equity positions in retail stocks, right? So what they get from us are footfalls, basically how many people, visitation counts, visitation patterns at a selected number of large retailers, which collectively informs their models of footfalls, of visitation, and therefore, which is strongly correlated to equity prices. So I'll stop there. Those are uses of our data.
Great. And Korwat, could you share a little bit about what you guys are doing with Echo? It's really fascinating.
Yeah, no, thank you. So Echo, we provide a mobile-first collaboration and communication platform for businesses with a special focus on frontline workers. So basically, we bundle a lot of very key functionalities such as communication, workflow, task management, knowledge management, e-learning into one service, which is deployed by companies with lots of frontline workers. We serve large enterprises, everything from banks to retailers and telecoms. And we started the business in 2012. We have about 500,000 paid subscriptions. We just over there's close to 150 of us. We're based in Bangkok and London.
Yeah, the discussion today is about going global, and thank you for bringing that up. You guys are based in London and Bangkok, and
Yeah.
you're heading over to the States. You guys are based in Atlanta. You're expanding globally. What are some insights you guys have, thinking about kind of your local knowledge that you've learned? How do you take that and expand that into new geographies?
You want?
Either one, because it's interesting on both sides.
So let's have a conversation on this. I mean, I'll go. Almost all my companies so far, and by the way, this is again sort of the traditional startup ethos, right? I mean, if you ask a standard VC, they'll say, "Hey, don't be too anxious to branch out." But almost all my companies have had almost from the beginning offices and operations in multiple geographies. So Eric, in many ways, for me, we have learned from multiple geographies at the same time, and I've always found that has enriched the product, right? And it's for Mobilewalla in particular, the needs that we serve are fairly the same. I mean, a bank, the need to assess risk of consumers is the same for an insurance company in United States as it is here. The difference is, the specific data items that indicate risk in the United States might be different than, but the basic models, the basic science, the basic tech works.
Do you think success is the same in the U.S. as it is outside the U.S.?
No, I don't. Right. But it's different. So for Mobilewalla, I'll give you from Mobilewalla, the reason US is hard is because there is more competition in the US, right? So there is so much noise about everything. So you go and you say that, hey, we can help you, create a persistent identity for your consumers. They'll say, oh, there are like 10 other companies, right? That's not the issue, let's say, in this part of the world, right? I mean, you go, there are not 20 other companies in the same story. But here, the issue is adoption of technology, right? I mean, generally, I have found, having done business in multiple locations, U.S. enterprises are much more willing to try something out, whereas here, getting people to try something out is much, much harder. So it's challenging both places, but for different reasons.
Yeah, sure. So Korwad, you're going the other way. You're taking your product that you built here in Asia and in Europe, and you're establishing operations in the U.S. What are some of the challenges you guys are seeing there, and have you had anything unanticipated that's already started to occur?
Yeah, I mean, we started in Thailand, in Bangkok, and we very quickly got a lot of adoption and traction in the country. So almost 20% of the stock market in market value is actually a client or partner of ours. But what we quickly realized was that the enterprise software spending market in Southeast Asia, to be honest, is quite small and not yet as mature as as the West. So if you look at data available, enterprise IT spending in Southeast Asia is actually close to $60 billion. But if you look at the UK alone, the UK and Ireland alone is actually $200 billion. So the difference in scale is actually in there. So what we realize is that if we're going to be a successful software is very different from consumer because there's very few barriers of entry for a really big player to come into our region and kind of be like, hey, it's a lot easier for Microsoft to bring their product and just put it right there, and then into our market versus another kind of services provider like a delivery application, for example. It's a very different. So for us, what we realize is that if we don't achieve scale, we're not going to survive. And the only way to achieve scale is to actually go to where the markets are for software. We moved our commercial headquarters to London.
How long ago was that?
That was just 6 to 8 months ago. We began to migrate. So now we're seeing very, very strong traction in Europe and we just started in the US, but we actually have a lot of launches coming up in the US too, and have actually so it's actually doing pretty well. And I think that what's really great is that Southeast Asia was ahead of the curve in terms of mobile adoption, and so we're also, when we enter into the US and to Europe, we're actually finding ourselves our products actually are more have a lot more functionality and readiness than many of the people who we might go up against in the States. I think the biggest challenge that we face is to do with recruiting and hiring and finding the right people. It's really difficult, for example, when there are no overlapping time zones between Southeast Asia and the U.S., right? But I mean, I think that it's all relatively. We're trying to hire about 100 people right now in the next 4 or 5 months, and across 5-6 different countries. So that's definitely like the biggest challenge, I'd say.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before, Nani, about just what kind of people you hire and when, and you had some really interesting insights on kind of how you built some of your companies prior. Can you share those?
Yes, and and going back to the discussion that you and I were having, I don't know, if there are entrepreneurs in the audience, the classic sort of Silicon Valley way of building a company, especially a venture-funded company, is that, and VCs almost insist on this, that hey, build out your management team, and then let them hire under them, right? So I have built my companies completely differently, right? So I almost always hire the middle layer first, the layer that's actually going to do the work, right? So if you think of engineering, I hire senior engineers who are going to code themselves, but can build a team under them than a VP of engineering, for instance, right? Even in sales, right? I mean, I hire actual individual contributor players first, and then hire a CRO, right? So I have always it's always worked out well for me. I'll give you an example. So for Mobilewala, the most successful region thus far, right? In terms of not in terms of overall revenue, but in terms of productivity per employee, has been Southeast Asia, right? So the person, the woman who runs Southeast Asian revenue for us, she's without doubt the most successful salesperson in the company, sales leader now. I hired her when she was 31 years old, right? And if you find the right person, right? I mean, who fits the culture, who you can train, who understands the product, I mean, I think you grow and scale much more quicker than hiring a really experienced leader who'll need time to build out the team, right? So that I'm a big believer in hiring the doer layer first and the upper layer afterwards.
Yeah, and then Korad, you got to do it a little bit different. When we were talking a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I think that actually I guess my favorite, I don't know if it's analogy, but what I like to think about is like if you look at Airbnb, the founders, right? Airbnb founders like Brian Chesky, they're art student graduates, right, in 2008. And now they're CEOs of $50 billion companies, right? That kind of, to go from art student graduate to CEO of $50 billion company in 10 years is an incredible pace of change. The pace of change that you need to develop at every year is absolutely amazing, right? On our part, I tell my team, hey, like the type of people we look for is very much shaped by that kind of inspiration. So, last year, for example, we quadrupled our revenues, right? So the question I asked to the team, to our leaders is, did you quadruple you as a person, you as your skills? Because if you didn't, then you're falling behind the business, right? So what we want to look for, what we look for when we open a new market is we look for people who are, they have to be, they can start at any point, but they have to do the groundwork necessary. But what's more important than that is that they're going to be able to develop and improve themselves exponentially as the team gets built out, as they build out their team. So change and adaptability and the rate of improvement of our people is the most important, or else, or else the scaling just won't happen in time.
Sure. So let's switch gears a little bit. This AWS event. Talk a little bit about your AWS journey, both from a technology perspective, what technologies have enabled you, and then just from a partner perspective. How do we help and how can we be better?
You want to go first?
Oh,
here?
no, please.
So, I did an audio and a video interview today where this exact same question was asked, but the question was phrased differently. The question was phrased as, hey, what was the difference between what you were doing before and when you started using AWS? So I have no answer to the question because I've never used anything other than AWS.
Thank you.
So the best way for me to answer that, Eric, is that there was no question in my mind that we needed to go on the cloud. Building a native infrastructure ourselves was impractical. From day one, I knew that we were going to deal with amounts of data and degrees of compute that for a startup, regardless of how much money I raise, right? It's impossible to build that. So of course I needed to go to the cloud. And once you go to the cloud, you basically have a couple of options, right? So, and I'm talking about 2013 at this time. For the kind of stuff that we needed, because we are a data company, we needed, we needed MapReduce support. We needed, I knew we were going to create sort of a large data lake. I knew the kind of computations we wanted to do. AWS just stood out. So there was never a question in my mind that, and unfortunately, I cannot tell you what happened as a result of my switching from something because I didn't switch from anything.
Great. That's great. What about from a partner perspective? How are we leaning in and where's it helpful? And as I said before, how can we be more helpful?
So this is the other thing. Yeah. So again, I wish I had something else to compare it to, but AWS has just been fantastic from a partner perspective, right? Just think of this particular event being here, this afternoon at the exec forum. I met 3 decision makers from 3 very, very large companies in the region, each of whom could be effectively a multi-million-dollar ACV client for us, right? And it's just hard meeting people at that level. In a space of 45 minutes, and it was AWS that arranged it. Now, clearly, it's not completely altruistic. If you get the business, it's good for AWS.
Good for everybody. Yep.
But I cannot speak enough of the degree of support we get. Of the degree of things like I think this year, of the events we have done in Southeast Asia, I think AWS has covered 1/3 of the event costs. And those events have led to deals, and in turn, those deals have led to AWS deployments, right?
Yeah, right.
So this is again, I don't know how somebody else does it, but this obsessive focus on partnership and this focus on making your partner successful, so in turn I can be successful, I love it.
Great, thank you. Cord, anything to add to that? I know you could not have built your business without us, I think, from a technology perspective. So
Yeah, absolutely. Both from I think that our business, we have there's some of the core strategies that help drive rapid growth would not be possible without AWS. The first thing is that the competitiveness of the scale and the pricing means that we're able to price our product really competitively, and that's really enabled really rapid growth that we look for, and that's really a key part of our strategy. The second thing is the scalability of of different regions. As we open more and more regions, we use AWS. We have AWS instances in China, in Europe, in the US, and here in Southeast Asia, and we're able to spin those up so quickly and so easily and provide that kind of high quality of a service for all of our for all our customers, and that's so important for the business. And certainly we deploy everything from from everything from EC3 to CloudFront to SNS, and we use so many AWS services to help us accelerate growth and really provide the best service for our customers.
And then we were talking about this before as well. You know, kind of this art of letting go to grow. You've run and you've had multiple successful companies. How do you know as a serial entrepreneur when it's time to start thinking about exiting? And what are the tea leaves that you read that say it's time to start thinking about where we want to go from here? And then how do you relinquish control? I mean, this is something you've built from the ground up. I think the audience would love to hear kind of historically. I know every story is different, but I think they'd love to hear historically kind of from your expertise. When is it time?
So the first thing I'll say, that there's an old adage that companies aren't sold, they're bought. I mean, that's extraordinarily true. So, and I'll give you a very practical example here. So I actually truly believe that and this belief has come with some experience, right? When I started off as a 29-year-old entrepreneur, I'm sure I went to bed dreaming of the G6 that I was going to buy with my, but those days are long gone. I mean, I truly believe that my number one job is to increase shareholder value, right? I mean, I truly believe that, and because now the same shareholders have funded multiple companies. I mean, I owe them so much. So I believe that. So really, if you come to the conclusion that I want to do the best thing for my shareholders, it's not such a hard decision, right? And it's really contextual. So and we have several MobileWallah MWRs in the audience. You know that I've turned down 3 acquisition offers for MobileWallah, right? In the last 12 months, right? One of them from this region, right? And they were not bad. They would have, if I took any one of those offers, I would have personally made reasonable money. But I just didn't feel that they were right for my shareholders. And by shareholders, I just don't mean people who gave us money. Even employees are shareholders of us, right? So I just didn't think that was the right thing to do. So it's hard, Eric, to come up with a normative rule of when's the right time. Entrepreneurs like me develop a sense of, hey, how far can this company scale, right? So when I sold Chutney to Cisco,
How long ago was that?
2006, right? That was my first company. It from a dollar offer perspective. Well, at that time it sounded a lot of money, but now it doesn't sound like a lot of money. It was less than $100 million, okay? But I, having come through the dot-com downturn and seen everybody die, I just knew that, or it seemed to me that taking that was the best thing I could do for my shareholders. I ended up making some money as well, which was good. For MobileWallah, I feel at this time that at least I don't see an end to our scaling in the sense that I don't see our revenue graph flattening, right? So once I see that, I will probably be more conscious of opportunities that arise. But it's hey, if at any given time you get an offer that you feel values the company at where you believe the company is going to be 2 years from now, right? That I would probably do that.
That's great. That's an interesting perspective. Korwad, your story's different. You had your first Series A at 19 years old, which is incredible. I love that story that you were telling me. I have kids that are 19, and they're more worried about keeping up with the Kardashians than they are about negotiating term sheets. So, you're 6 years later now. Tell a little bit about kind of the journey that's happened since that first initial term sheet. Is being an entrepreneur everything you thought it was going to be? What are some things you thought were going to be there that weren't? And where do you see things going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nothing ever goes to plan, right? So it's so different, and I think that it's like you mentioned at the beginning. You're thinking, okay, it's gonna go like a rocket, but that's never the case, right? I think that between our first rounds and our latest round last year, we've had so many difficult years, and periods where we were going up and down, and wasn't so sometimes maybe wasn't so sure. And I think that when you think about building a startup, you think about entrepreneurship, you don't think about those kind of difficult times that's going to happen and the kind of ups and downs. We had um, points when we were obviously staring down at bank accounts that were almost depleted and those kind of things. You don't think about that. And I think that I never thought that it would happen to us. But, those are the things that I guess, it's a test, and it's a huge learning and huge lesson, and so important, I think. I think that we have a very long way to go. We're just beginning, the market is so large and so much potential for what we're doing. So I think that, for me, similarly, I don't see any point in which I would want to exit. That's something I guess it's a little different. I also a little different is that I'd also tell my shareholders straight up, you're investing in us, but there's no exit in sight. And probably for us, our dream would be an IPO. Other than that, we focus on building our business and focus on building our work.
Yeah, you guys are definitely business first, which is great. Obviously, founding a company is a marathon, not a sprint. Let's look into our crystal balls together collectively. Where are you 3 years from now? Where's Mobile Wallet 3 years from now?
I would think I can tell you what I'd like it to be 3 years from now. One thing that Korawat just said, which is very, very true, is that it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen, right? So in 3 years from now, I would like us to be a $100 million company, right? I mean, that's sort of the internal goal that we have. I think that's, but if we leave aside the sort of the financial goal aspect of it, I would definitely like virtually every retailer and every telecom company in the world to be using Mobile Wallet solutions in one way or it's not that everybody has to have a massive multi-million-dollar solution. I mean, there are people that buy $60,000 products as well, right? So I would like every major retailer and every major telecom company to be using Mobile Wallet in one way or the other. So basically, it's a household name in that community.
That's great. What about for you guys?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned right before, we had some difficult years, and I guess at a certain point, 2 or 3 years ago, we entered into what we call survival phase, which is we have to survive at all costs. We have to optimize our costs, we have to get revenue, we have to just survive, right? And actually, what I realized is that we should never exit this phase. So as we look forward for the next 3
Stay
years,
hungry.
my goal actually is to survive. And actually, if you look at our industry, right, to survive, you have to grow really quickly, and you have to create scale, and for us, that's what we want to do. We want to supercharge growth, and we want to create as much scale as possible, as quickly as possible, and expand as rapidly as possible. We give up 50% of our revenue to our partners perpetually in order to create to scale as rapidly as possible, but not scale for the sake of it's scaling to survive, because of course in software, if you don't have scale, you're going to be out invested, and I don't think that you can survive in the long term.
It's interesting. So, if we kind of, looking back, if you could go back and meet the younger version of yourself, and I'll let you pick what age you want here, but if you could go back and
But
meet
he
the
has
younger,
to pick like 3-year-old.
that's why I said I'll let you pick the age. If you could go back and meet the younger version of yourself, what was what piece of advice would you give yourself, from however many years ago, that you wish you knew that you could put into place today?
Sure. I'll
Start us
start.
off.
I actually, I was thinking about your question for a while, and I feel like the first.
I sprung this question on them before.
I think
so.
it's really difficult because like all the lessons that you know today, it's something that you have to learn through experience. You can listen to people tell you, but you have to learn it you have to experience it for yourself. I feel so. But I think that what I was really lucky, I feel, is that when I was when we were started the business, it wasn't working out, and my dad gave me advice, gave me a talk, gave me an advice that really, if I didn't get it, I think that I don't know where we'd be, but it was early years, and I was like, hey, I want to shift the business, I want to pivot from this B2B platform to fresh food delivery, right?
Very similar.
Yeah, so I told him, like, I'm basically I'm giving this is not going to work, and my dad, uh, for him, like, he's been building businesses for decades, and he was and it took him his time to build his a 10-20 billion dollar company, and he came to me, and he said, I order you not to give up, like, very serious, and you will continue this. And I mean, I was 18 or something like that, and so that's what actually got me to keep going on this business, and not shift. I mean, I wanted to, but I had no choice. But then what I realized is that, I mean, yes, it was the perseverance. It was not giving up. It was a perseverance and going through those times, that actually is the most important thing, I think. It's like, someone told me, it's like you have to be a cockroach as a startup, right? Cockroaches are really hard to kill. You have to be really hard to kill to succeed, I think.
Yeah, that's great. And India, what about you? And how far back are we going here?
No, so let's go back to when I was 27.
So
right?
3 weeks ago.
When I was thinking of my first. So my answer is going to be very sort of, building anything, right? In our case, it's startups. It could be something else, Those of you who have seen, I forget what the name of the church is, in the Gaudi's church in Barcelona. That's going on for, that they're still building it, right? I forget what it's. Yeah, La Familia. Yeah. So I just didn't know, Eric. I wish I could go tell my younger self. I could give some clues to how hard this is, and many of the problems I have now, are or the toughest challenges I have are possibly not operational, right? I mean, they are emotional. They are, and it different at different ages. But I still miss my daughter's birthdays. Those are extraordinarily hard, right? I mean, you quite are not there yet, right? But some days I just wake up thinking that another week had gone by and I had not exchanged a text message with my daughter, right? So I just wish, and it's very hard. It makes you feel, it totally, like, makes you feel. From an operational sense, building is, so you have probably experienced this, unless you have gone through the following scenario that, on Friday you're going to make payroll, and let's say, I don't know, your payroll is $100,000, right? Something small, relatively small. And on Wednesday at 4 p.m., you have $1.23 in your bank account, right? So unless you have experienced this, I cannot tell you how incredibly hard this is, right? And the effect, you get diarrhea with stress. I mean, it's just so. Unless you have gone through these things, no matter, if I could truly go back, I would basically tell them that, hey, be prepared that A, B, C, D, E, F are going to happen. Like A, B, C are going to happen now. Once you are 40 years old, these are the other things that are going to happen once, So I just wish I could have prepared myself emotionally to experience what and doing a startup as it's an incredibly lonely thing as well, right?
Yeah,
At the end,
founders think different, for sure.
That's right. So.
No, I think that's great insight. And again, I founded a couple companies myself, so I'm actually going to answer this question too. I think if I look back at what I learned, and if I go back and talk to myself as younger, it's don't fear failure, because we're going to fail. Like, we have the best plans, the best intentions, we think we're right, and but I've learned a lot more from failure than I have from success.
for
That's
sure.
Absolutely.
And I think and I continue to do so. So good. Okay, great. Well, I wanted to thank you
Great,
guys
thank
both.
you.
I appreciate it. I know you both traveled here for this, so thank you for doing that. Thank you for your partnership, and
Thank you.
onward and upward. So thank everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.